Welcome back to the Athlete's Mindset. Today's guest is Jed Collins, former NFL fullback, certified financial planner, and the founder of Money Vehicle, where he helps athletes and professionals build a strong financial future. Jed's journey to the NFL wasn't easy. He went undrafted, was cut 13 times, and refused to let setbacks define him. That perseverance eventually led to a successful NFL career. But what makes his story even more unique is that while he was still playing, he was already preparing for life after football. In this episode, we talk about what it's really like to play in the NFL, overcoming rejection, developing an elite mindset, separating your identity from your sport, and how athletes can set themselves up for success long after their playing careers are over. Whether you're an athlete, an entrepreneur, or someone chasing a goal, there's a lot of wisdom in this conversation. Let's get into it. Jed, fullback of finance, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Tristan, I love the voice you are putting out, the message you're delivering, and truly just appreciate the opportunity to come share some of my message with your fans.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely stoked to have you on here. To start, I want to ask you, you spent plenty of years in the NFL. What are some things or just something that you think the average fan or just the average person doesn't understand about the NFL?
The thing I don't think most people appreciate about playing professional sports, the NFL in particular, is that we become doctors of the game. We go and we travel and get our schooling in this sport of football until we become doctors of the game. And you see the quarterback, the detail they have to put in, but truly from the time you break a huddle to snap the ball, every play in your playbook, and that could be 15 to 20 runs, 30 to 40 passes. Every one of those plays has 5 to 10 different variations of them based on the front, based on the coverage, based on where everything shifts, again, as you snap the ball. A lot of people look at the big dumb jock of the past and the big maulers, the brutes that played the game. In the NFL today, there are crazies, and I am not going to shy away and say there are not crazies. They're definitely there. But these guys are no longer big dumb jocks. There are no idiots who make it to this level. There's been too many off ramps and off roads and mistakes that they've had to avoid. So anybody who is a professional athlete in the NFL understands first and foremost how to prioritize what they want most over what they want right now. But they have also been able to study the game to an extent that they are truly students to the point of becoming doctors of the game of football. And I just wish more people would give consideration and some respect to the depths of knowledge we have about this game people like watching.
Yeah, I think for most average fans, you watch, NFL football, even watch college football, and the first thing that comes to your head is just that they're unbelievable athletes, is they are, guys out there that run 4.4s and can jump out of the gym or whatever it may be. And so you see that, but you don't understand there's months of off season and practice that are going into, showing that success on the field. But then also week to week, as you're preparing for a team that's you're trying to score on and they're trying to stop you from scoring. And so there's so much more that goes into it rather than, Patrick Mahomes can sling the rock a little bit. Josh Allen,
Sure.
he can run a little bit. That's all he does. No, there's so much more that goes into it. And I want to dive into your path to the NFL a little bit more. Can you explain what your path to the NFL was like?
A series of failures that strung together ended up being a career. I believe it was Winston Churchill who said, great success is going from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm. And I went into the NFL coming out of college. I was a tight end, believe it or not, a receiving tight end. You mentioned the 4.4 40. One of my greatest accomplishments is I survived the NFL for 7 years running a 5 40.
Wow.
I had my resume thrown out the door before most coaches even gave it a second look based on that one criteria of 40-yard dash time. But as I looked at entering into the NFL, I realized a 5 40, 6'1" tight end is just unheard of in that level, again, on the NFL stage. So I realized I was going to have to shift and adopt into where do I belong? How do I get onto the field? And that was my introduction to the fullback position. Didn't play it in college, didn't know much about it, knew it was, you had to learn to be the hammer and not the nail in collisions. But it was this evolution of myself, my identity, And as I went from going undrafted, again, not many people saw potential in a slow, short tight end, going into a new position and being cut a dozen times, I really started to understand each building I walked into, I had to steal and take something to eventually become the player I needed to be to play at that level. And so my journey into the NFL was starting in Philadelphia, being cut, released. I went to Chicago, I went to Cleveland, I went to Arizona, I went back to Cleveland, Tennessee, New Orleans, Detroit, Dallas. I played for, almost half of the NFL teams, not all on the active roster, not all for longer than sometimes 3 or 4 weeks. But what it allowed me to do was realize, A, I was competing against the athleticism of the other guys competing for my job. B, I'm not only competing with the guys in the building, there are guys endlessly in 31 other buildings and just on the street who want my job. You're competing with the upstairs of the buildings, which is the business side. How does the salary cap fit work? Who do we have money committed to? Who's a high draft pick we got to keep around? Even if they're the 6th wide receiver or the 4th running back, sometimes you just got to keep guys based on salary and kind of a world beyond what we knew growing up. And last but not least, you're competing with the notion that every day you are going against the best in the world, and there is no substitution for work ethic. There is no excuse for failure. Professionals are not allowed to make mental errors. And so as I bounced around and got cut that many times, I began to realize my goal in my job going into each building was, how do I give them no reasons to cut me? I cannot be late to a meeting. I cannot make a mental mistake. I cannot loaf. I cannot do any of those things that are within my control, because there is enough outside of my control that was kind of going against me. And that was one of the biggest kind of epiphanies of mow your grass, focus on what you can control, find peace in the things that you can't. And a dozen times the things outside of my control beat me, but that resilience and that mindset and the grit and determination eventually, if you don't lose the enthusiasm, usually pays off.
Yeah, you mentioned resilience and kind of just that bend don't break mentality. How did you just keep going when, you get cut once, you get cut again, it keeps happening, and you feel like you may be in a spot where you go, yeah, this is where it's really going to stick, and then it's another week and you're somewhere else in the country. How did you stay positive throughout that entire time and just know this is going to work out at some point?
Honestly, it takes me back to my childhood. In my house, we had a kennel, which was just next to the house, little area for our dogs to sleep and for the trash cans to live. And most of our chores ended up in the kennel somehow. And I remember very vividly one day cleaning up a pile of greens, and I have 2 older brothers, and I'm the only one out there doing it because I lost, and the losers have to do the chores. But today, that day that I remember so vividly, I was smiling. I was so proud of myself. And it was coincidence because my dad created a game called King for a Day. And despite being a football player, we were a basketball family. So King for a Day was one-on-one basketball against my 2 older brothers. Growing up, a year and a half, 2.5 years is a lot of time. And of the 1,000 times we played King for a Day, I can only vividly remember winning twice. So it taught me how to lose. It taught me how to measure myself based on a different outcome. I wasn't going to walk on the court and win king. So what was I going to represent, or what was I going to see as success? It wasn't the scoreboard. It was my progression and my improvement. And as I continued to play them, continued to lose each day, I would score maybe one more point. I'd get maybe one more stop. I was developing as the player. Why I'm smiling in the kennel this one day, and my oldest brother Lenny comes in and says, "Dad says you can go inside." I walk into the house and my dad looks up. He's actually reading a biography, and this is what he does after the day's work's done, sitting in his chair. And he looks up from his book and he simply says, "Why didn't you tell me you didn't lose?" That day I won, but my dad wasn't watching the game. He just walked up at the end of the King for a Day match and he said, "Are you guys done?" And I excitedly was like, "Yeah," waiting for the next question of who won to be like, "Hey, it was me." And all he said was, "Great, Jed, follow me." And we went into the kennel and he pointed at the pile and he's like, "Get this in there. That's your job. You're the loser of the day." And so when he asked me, like, why didn't you tell me why you didn't, that you won? I answered like any 8, 9 year old boy would. I don't know. Like, number one, you've never liked when we, objected to your commands or explained ourselves. You give us an order and we go do it. And to this day, I really didn't fully understand. One, King for a Day taught me the greatest lesson ever, the one I just shared of I can lose without being defeated. I can see failure and see it differently than most people. I see it as my first attempt in learning. I see it as a way to grow and a way to improve. But why this day stuck out to me, and truly just years later as I journal and think about it, I'm laughing, I'm smiling, I'm proud in the kennel doing the servant loser's work because I never needed my dad or my brothers to go, Jed, you're the king. I believed that day I was the king. I had one. I believed I was that guy. My identity had changed. And even with that change, even being the loser, I was still willing to put in the work. And so, how I went into the NFL and was able to get defeated and continue is even when I would get cut and leave, they would tell me, here's a trash bag, go clean out your locker. You're getting on a plane and going home. My mind didn't go to, oh, boo hoo, woe is me. My mind went to, how do I get better? I'm leaving the Cleveland Browns. What about this experience is going to make Jed a better player, but a better human? Those lessons are what King for a Day taught me. That moment in the kennel where I was proud of myself without the title, without the recognition, even though I felt I had deserved it. I think that is the lesson for every entrepreneur in the world or athlete. If you want to see yourself as something, it's much more important that you identify with it than the trophy. The trophy is never going to give you the fruition that you hope. A little older than you, but Cool Runnings is a great movie, and John Candy in it talks about the gold medal. And he says, hey, if you're not enough without the gold medal, you'll never be enough with it. And that to me was that moment in the kennel of I became enough without the title, without the trophy. And going into the NFL, I believed I could do it. I saw myself way before anyone else in the building did. And that's how I could survive defeat and keep going and getting better.
Yeah. Great shout out to Cool Runnings, one of my favorite movies of all time.
Nice.
Yeah, a brilliant movie. You touched on something that I absolutely love is just that you didn't let someone else write your story. I think a lot of
Mm,
players, at any level, is if you get cut from a team in high school or it's in the NFL, whatever it may be, is you could easily just say, well, I'm not good enough. No one thinks I'm
hmm
good enough. I don't think I'm good enough. When in reality, like you just said, is you got to think of yourself as a winner before you may even ever win. And so I think that's so important to be able to understand that yourself rather than just let everyone else dictate, exactly what your career is going to be.
And that beautifully translates into the world today. Just yesterday, I was talking to a real estate company who right now the world is saying real estate's on the decline. It's a tough economic environment. The rates are changing, the price and the values of homes, things outside of their control. And you continue to do exactly what you just said. I want to write my own story, which is why I trying to empower young athletes to see that their voice is going to be their greatest asset because it's one that stays with them no matter what game they're playing. We train every day for a game we know is going to end. You gave everything to the game of baseball and eventually you just weren't a baseball player. Like that's who we are. So how do we take the lessons and the things and the stories and bring them into our everyday life? We have to write our own story. You have to start capturing it as you go through it, the details, the emotions, the feelings, the things AI will not be able to duplicate. And as you look at the future, if you don't write your story, AI will. And it's okay, it can, but it will never be able to give that human touch and the human nature of what you're feeling, what you saw, and what you became. That's the power, not just athletes, but I look at young athletes and the booming of sports in the world today and say, if you're not capturing your story, I would argue you're missing out on your greatest asset.
It's so interesting. I've heard plenty of people who have been extremely successful, whether it's in sports, whether it's business, whatever it may be. You can ask them, what do you wish you would have done when you were kind of just starting? And a lot of them say, like, I wish I would have documented this because in the
No.
moment you think I'm at the bottom right now. I'm just working for it. But there's so many things that, in my life, I wish the day that I recorded the first episode of the podcast, I wrote about it, because I remember going into it, I was so fearful of, what are my friends going to think? What are people going to
Mm.
say about this guy that randomly just starts a podcast and starts posting on social media?
Uh-huh.
And it's been nothing but positive, but I wish I could go back to that and just write out what I was thinking. And then I could go back and read it and say, wow, like that was my thought in the moment. And look how well it's doing right now and how I'm not even close to where I want to be. So I think the documentation part is something that's so cool that you did. And if you want to dive into it, I would love to hear more about it.
Yeah, man. Exactly what you just said. So many people tell me, well, Jed, I don't really want to start journaling because I'm in a tough place. And my response is like, this is what you want to remember. You want to encapsulate those feelings because when you're on the highs, you want to remember the lows. And when you're in your lows, you want to be able to see through time and say, man, these things don't last forever. Like, I just got to get through this and continue moving in the right direction. I would say the greatest gift journaling has given me is the ability to travel through time. And people think like that's a funny comment and a funny way to frame it, but I can go back to, yeah, my high school days, my college days. Now, I will admit some of my college days probably shouldn't and won't make it into my published journals, but I go back to every day I got cut. I went to my journal and said, how can this be a lesson? How can that coach that came in and told me, that player that warned me, or that moment that I felt like maybe that was the reason, really just being able to self-reflect and analyze. Your performance increases the more you look at how you're doing. Your mental health will increase the more you are able to really have a place to vent, a place to be accepted. In the land of social media today, everything we put out is immediately judged, liked, not liked. When I first started posting on social media, the people who reached out to me, my own brothers, were like, what are you doing? Like, you're not a social media guy. Like, stop it. And if I would have listened to them, 10 years later, I would never be where I am today. You do have to break through that concern of public opinion. A lot of people ask me, like, how do you get started on social? And I say, it doesn't matter. Your first 100 posts, nobody's going to see anyways. Even your first 100 episodes of your podcast, like, those aren't the viral things. When you get to episode 272 and Malcolm Gladwell's your guest, that's when you blow up. So don't worry about public opinion when you're getting started. The good news, bad news is nobody is watching. The gift it has given me today, as I look back on my experiences, people ask me, well, Jed, like, how did you survive the NFL? And I don't have to make things up because I documented it. I get to go back and not create a story, but I get to just capture what that story was, maybe reframe it and kind of make it a little bit more clear as to where I'm going and what the message is. But even the moment of King for a Day, that is me sitting in my journal. I also have a great moment in my book in Fourth and Goal. I'm sitting in the Detroit Lions knowing this is my 7th season. This is probably going to be the end of the road for me. And my question to myself is, well, when did this all begin? Like, where do I go back to attribute the change in my life of becoming a professional football player? And it takes me back to a trailer in high school that my high school coach was sitting in. And my brother and I, the middle brother, Jake, and I were transferring high schools. And we're sitting in this trailer and he's looking at me and going, where do you think you're going for basketball? And I remember kind of being offended and also kind of being like, wow, I've never had somebody question and challenge. My whole life has been Jed, the basketball player. We're going to Santa Margarita High School. This is how we're going to get to college. We're transferring and leaving Santa Margarita, so my identity is already in question, and now he is starting to form a new dream for me when he starts talking about players on his team who look like me, my build-up. I'm 220 pounds at the time, not a basketball frame. And he goes, I got guys that look like you going to Division I football. Have you ever thought about that? Have you ever thought about your future? And it was that question, that Simon Cowell, tough critic of like, son, you can't sing, but you can dance. Have you ever thought about dancing? And it's like that moment to me was so clear because I'm able to capture it as I go through it, because I have the comments, because I have the moment of him sitting back in his chair and pausing to just, for no other reason, to just portray to me he's in control and this is his kingdom, which he did. And he is a legendary. He just passed, actually, rest in peace, Bob Johnson. Changed mine and thousands of other young men's lives. Um, but if I could challenge anybody, it would be, don't overthink it. Just start. I use a framework now, NOW, capture now. Now, what's happening in your moment right now? I'm talking to Tristan. I'm sitting in my office. My dog is asleep in the corner. What did you observe today? What's something that stuck out to you that you went through a moment of time? And then what are you wondering about? So now what's happening? What did you observe? And what are you wondering? And that's both the good and the bad. Think about the stresses and the things you're trying to overcome. That's the beginning of a journal. And in a week or a year, maybe a decade, you're going to be able to travel back and see yourself. Most of your concerns and your worries never come to fruition. That's a great lesson of journaling. Half the things I'm sitting and scribbling like, oh my gosh, what happens if, never happen. So I think journaling is this secret skill that haven't seen a college campus, a high school campus begin to teach and implement, because it is the beginning of storytelling. And if we look at the future of leadership in the world of artificial intelligence, you're going to have to be able to communicate through story, because that has a human element that AI simply can't duplicate.
Yeah, absolutely. It also just gives you a resume of things, like you said, the good times, the bad times. You can look back and say, wow, I was really going through it at the time. And look where I am
Mm,
now. I made it through. Or, oh, what was I doing when things felt I was just on cloud nine and no one could stop me and I was just kind of in a flow state? What was I doing then? What was I writing about then? And you can say, all right, I need to get back to that. But I think it's just so important to write out, for me, I just try to practice, being grateful in my journal. So it's three
mm.
wins from the previous day, and then it's something I'm grateful for, something to improve on, and then just the most important thing for this day. And it's something that one has just made it seem, or made me feel like, if there is something going wrong or I'm going, huh, life's kind of been just kicking my ass right now, then I can go, well, I had these three wins and they were absolutely awesome. My life is pretty great. I need to, appreciate those things. So I think just
Keep
writing those
perspective.
things out is so important. And how you kind of explained it almost feels like it's a movie where, they go back in time of like a flashback of
Hmm.
you're sitting in your locker room in Detroit and you're thinking, where's this all starting? You go on a flashback back to back in high school and just where it all started, which I think is so cool.
I was going to say, my greatest feedback so far from fourth and goal has been former teammates calling me and saying, A, you took me back to the locker room. You took me back into the game. Like, I enjoyed traveling through and feet, because the emotion, that's what I'm trying to capture, is what I'm going through. The highlight to me, though, is I've had two different grown men call me and go, the beginning of the book, Fourth and Goal, starts, I'm leaving New Orleans thinking this is my team, this is my career, I'm going to get a new contract, this is where my future is. Flash forward, that's the season with the Detroit Lions, so it doesn't work out. But I go through free agency. I go through the off season of questions. I'm having my first child, instability, and I've had two grown men call me and go, Jed, I had to put the book down. It was bringing up too much within me, things that they told me, they're like, I've never fully analyzed, fully remembered how hard free agency really was, how much you have no idea of your future in the great. They could be possibly great. It could be possibly the worst. It could be possibly a lot of scenarios. But to be able for them to tell me, you've evoked that emotion, you've brought me back into that, that means I was able to communicate that emotion, communicate that really the depths of what we were going through beyond just, oh, am I going to make a team or not? It was our livelihoods. It was our identity. And it was the way now, as about to be a father, I was going to provide for my family. And yet all of it was out of my control and all of it was in question at the same time. So yeah, I love that you are calling out that the highs and the lows especially are going to be the lessons you want to look back and remember. And it's the connectivity
Yeah.
that starting your podcast and having that imposter syndrome is what you and I looked at you and I go, yep, I know exactly what he's feeling. I know exactly what he's talking about. That is the beauty of storytelling and the beauty of documenting your journey is in the future, you're going to realize you're not alone. Everybody feels or has that thought. Perhaps you can help them through it. Perhaps you can build their athletic mindset to overcome it.
Yeah, and I don't think you would have got that reaction from those people that read the book if you didn't work on storytelling or if you didn't document everything. Because I think storytelling is a lost art. You could have just said, yeah, my time in New Orleans was done and I'm looking for a new NFL team to play for. Most people would be like, wow, that sounds pretty great. There's really nothing, no adversity there. You're just a lucky man. But there's so much more, and it's a lot deeper for you going through it, and you're starting a family and you have all these stuff going on. And I just think that's so cool that you can articulate that so well. I would love to hear you articulate just what clicked for you in New Orleans. You are, getting cut and you feel like, you're writing your own story, but it doesn't seem like you've made it to the NFL yet or really got onto the field. What happened in New Orleans that really clicked?
Number one, first and foremost, Sean Payton gave me an opportunity. So many teams have the luxury of kind of knowing what 53 they want before training camp even starts. And so I fought a lot of battles I had lost before it even began. New Orleans Saints, Sean Payton in particular, now with the Denver Broncos, he likes the land of misfit toys. He likes making guys his own, saying, I saw something in them that nobody else saw. So the opportunity from Coach Payton to even compete was massive. Number two, the timing was perfect. We were actually in the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement negotiations, and it was during the lockout. And so the fullback they actually brought in to pay and be the job couldn't practice the first 2 days of pads. And so Jed, because of this kind of fluke CBA kind of footnote, was the starting fullback. And once I got into that huddle, I was like, man, you're nobody's taking me out of this thing. Let's go. And then it was the mindset shift for me of a great, Roman gladiator kind of mentality. You go to battle, you come back with your shield or on it. And that was the fight fire with fire mindset I had to have going in. I'd been cut, I'd been burned. I knew I wasn't going to be able to mediocrely take a job. I was going to have to go in guns a-blazing, willing to end up, and what my quote I kept repeating in my mind this training camp was, I'm willing to go on IR. Like I was at a point where my body was not my priority. My future was not my priority. It was right now. Right now, are you willing to do what it takes to make this team? And I didn't have that desperation coming out of college. One, I didn't know the fullback position like I learned and realized they have to be the baddest dude on the field. And I got to a point where we'd go into games. I would stand on the 50-yard line and watch warm-ups of the linebacker core, the D linemen, who I was going to go battle with. And I would stare at them and just say in my head, I'm the baddest dude out here. You don't know that yet. You might not know that, but come kickoff, you're going to know, you're going to fear me. And it wasn't until I started to look at the collisions where I was going against bad mamba jambas, the meanest, baddest dudes, middle linebackers in the land. And I got to a point where I was saying, they're going to fear me. That monster, Jedzilla, I talk a lot about Jedzilla in the book, this character I had to adopt. It came from an opportunity from Coach Payton. I started to see the unique moment in time with the CBA, but truly what changed in New Orleans was my desperation, my hunger. Nobody was going to be willing to do what I was willing to do, and that made me a very scary man. And man, I just got chills kind of talking about it, but yeah, it's a guy my daughters don't know, and I hope they never meet, but it is a mindset that I'm trying to even get them to now that they're 12 and 10 years old. They're playing their sports, and I'm going, you're a very nice girl. That's great. I want you to be a nice girl in life. Between these lines, though, like you get turned into a character. What's your character's name? Who are they? And why do people fear them? And so it was a monumental shift in myself. But again, New Orleans broke my heart in the beginning of this book, but they also changed my life. And so with time, I got that perspective. I share in the book that originally my first daughter's name was going to be Palmer Nola, Nola being New Orleans and kind of a shout out. And after things happen, we have to change her name, before she gets here. My second daughter ends up getting Nola as the middle name. So I do love New Orleans and appreciate the Saints. But yeah, at the moment it was too soon, too much of a hurt too much to give them any love.
Yeah. I think that's the number one thing that any athletes, whether the rankings say you're the best or they say you're unranked, whatever it may be, is when you step onto the field, you have to believe that you're the best player on the field. I
Mm,
remember just playing quarterback in high school. Is every time I stepped onto the field, it was I'm the best athlete here and no one's going to stop me. And that's just
bingo.
maybe to some people that just sounds cocky or arrogant, but if you don't believe that yourself, how are the guys
Who
around you
will?
supposed to believe it as well? And no one else is going to believe it. So that's just one of the mindsets. And especially in baseball, is when you step into the box and the pitcher's on the mound, is, his number one goal is to get you out, and your number one goal is to beat him. And so if I don't think that, I'm the best guy on the planet in that moment, then he's already got my number. So I think that's
Mhm,
one of the most important things in just all of sports is you have to believe that you're the best in order to be the best. The fullback position, such an
mm,
interesting position, one of the most selfless positions in all of
mhm.
football. What was that transition like to becoming a fullback? And then just break down the importance of playing fullback.
So the acceptance from, I was the star middle linebacker in high school. I was a star tight end in college. I got my name in the paper a lot. When you adopt the fullback mentality, you realize my job is no longer to get my name in the paper. It's to get this guy behind me's name in the paper and to make him the hero. I'm the soldier. In football, we divide up very quickly into two categories. Are you an artist where we want you to have the ball or we want you to defend the guy with the ball and show off just the sheer amazing athleticism you have? Or are you a tough guy? And the tough guys are meant to create space for the artist to go do their dance. I shifted my kind of who I was as an identity from an artist kind of player to a tough guy mentality and really looked at the humility and that pill you have to swallow is I am now playing for something bigger than myself. I'm not playing for my stats, my recognition. I'm playing for the team and I'm playing to sacrifice myself for the team to sometimes get 1 yard. And so transitioning it was that adoption of the personality of who I needed to become. Football or fullbacks in particular kind of have two identities. You're the mean dude, and there are some, country boys who play fullback who are just tough as nails and angry at the world. I wasn't that kind of guy. So I, instead of being mean, I went with crazy. And my character had a long ponytail. I had a grizzly, unshaven beard. I was much thicker and, had more weight. So physically, I was selling the character I wanted you to see. But I would also do a bunch of stuff on the field to make people think I was kind of weird, kind of strange. Like maybe this guy does have a real screw loose. I had to sell that character. But after the humility, the fullback position, you have to accept you are the hammer. You can never be the nail. If you're accepting a blow, if you are receiving a hit, you're in the wrong, and that's a minus on the play. And so it's a willingness to look at pain and say, I am willing to endure an amount of pain. But what a real fullback does is look at a collision and say, I know this guy's going to feel it a lot more than I am. And that is being a fullback, is looking at the collision, looking at this monster of a middle linebacker and saying, I'm not going to knock him out of the way. I'm not going to knock him off his cleats. I need to move him back 6 inches, and I need to make sure he knows the next time he comes in that hole or tries to hit me, he's going to go in the same direction he did this time, backwards. And it is a willingness. A lot of people would tell me things like, oh, fullback doesn't take a lot of skill. Fullback does not take a lot of skill. It is a position of will. Are you willing? And everybody can line up and be willing to do it once. The real challenge is come fourth quarter, we got 4 minutes and we're going to run out the clock. They know what the play is. You know what the play is. Are you willing to go put the hurt in to get that 3 yards so we can keep the clock moving? You look at the game over the last 10, 15 years, even when I was playing it, they're always trying to eliminate the fullback position because we want to spread the field. We want more artists. We want to get more people out there. And you look at the teams that have gone through deep playoff runs consistently. I always look at the final four, the final 8 teams every year. The majority of them have fullbacks. The
Yep.
majority of them have a player who says, Come the end of the game, we can control the clock. That's what the run game does. It controls the clock, controls the ball. So if you're looking to win a game, yeah, fullback might not be able to help you. If you're looking to win games throughout a season, that position and the mentality that position brings onto the field. Every time I'd come in and it was third, fourth and short or goal or 4 minute drill, I'd always look at the circle around me, the huddle, the quarterback is over getting the play and doing important things. I would look at my boys and go, fellas, the cavalry is here. I am the cavalry. We're about to go do this. And that was the persona and the mindset a fullback needs to have.
There's so much momentum that can come from a fullback as well. Is like you have fourth and goal as the name of your book, but even if it's, third and inches and you need this first down or else you're punting late in the game, if the defense gets a stop there because you can't, open that gap for your running back to get through, that team has all of the momentum. But if you
Absolutely.
do your job, you push that middle linebacker back 4 yards and your running back finds a hole and you guys are moving the sticks, then you guys have all the momentum in the world. And that just comes down to the fullback position, which I think is so cool. And I think it's so cool that you just told yourself, all right, I'm not going to be a tight end. The fullback position is kind of just became your calling and you found a way to just make the most of it. What is it like scoring a touchdown in the NFL?
There are moments in life where you realize there's nowhere else you'd rather be.
Mhm.
Um, Getting across that line, looking up and seeing the crowd go wild, and realizing everything you've worked for at this moment in time has come to fruition. It is a feeling like no other. It's the feeling that every athlete misses when the game is done because of the depths of the work, because of the pain, because of the losses, because of the 5 a.m. wake ups, the weights, everything. You feel in that moment success. And it's one of the very few brief moments because it's, hey, we got a point after here coming very quickly. It's a brief moment where you get to enjoy the payoff. And as an ambitious person, ambition is a curse and a blessing. Ambitious people are never in the moment enjoying it because they're always trying to build to what's next. It is for every ambitious person, it is a moment to reflect and go, this is it. This is the 5 to 20 seconds where everything I'm working for has come to fruition. So I call them nowhere else I'd rather be. You get a nowhere else I'd rather be kind of moment. And I will call out, fourth and goal, third and short. For 4 years in the NFL, a young man named Tom Brady battled, and he battled against one individual that just would not go away. That was yours truly. Jed Collins and Tom Brady battled for 4 years as the only two players in the NFL that were perfect on third and fourth in short conversions. And spoiler alert, as he does with pretty much everything in his life, being the GOAT,
Mhm.
I end 4 years. I get stopped finally, and Tom still's probably never been stopped on third and fourth in short. But that goes through the book is me referencing and calling out every time I get a 3rd and 1 and I convert it, and I end up converting about 18 in a row. Um, he is always doing the same, and so it's a stat and it's a contest. To this day, he has no idea that I was fighting him and competing with him for 4 seasons, but it is one that I cherish and go, yeah, I've competed with Tom Brady. He won, but
Yeah.
barely, but
Yeah.
barely.
I think that's so cool to have him in just a conversation of a record that,
Yeah.
you have is, oh, who was the guy you were competing with? Tom Brady. He might, not know that your entire career is that you were competing with them and maybe checking out. Did Tom not get it on a 3rd and 1 or something like that? But yeah, that's so cool.
That's the
So
ultimate little brother story right there. Like, he doesn't
yeah,
even know this is happening, but it's very important to me.
yeah, that's so funny. Um, So talk about kind of coming towards the end of your career. I think something that the, casual, sports fan just thinks is that when someone makes it to the professionals, whether it's the NFL, MLB, NHL, NBA, they're set. You have
Mm,
these mega contracts, it's millions of dollars. They're like you talked about, it's a business. There's a lot going on there, and you think these athletes are kind of just set for life. That is 100% not the case.
uh-uh.
Throughout, going to the end of your career, from the financial side of, things and becoming a certified financial planner, what was kind of going through your head there?
So I actually wrote in my journal my rookie year in 2008, 18 years ago. I wish I could come back as a financial expert and teach my brotherhood this language of money. Because even though I was a finance, or excuse me, an accounting major and kind of knew the world of finance coming into the NFL, I still had no idea what personal finance was. In college, they teach you 100,000 widgets and how to create a financial statement, but they never go, hey, here's $100,000. Here's what you and your family are supposed to go do with it. So it was a dream. Again, journaling, great, comes to fruition if you write it down, much more. So the dream I get to live today is I go back and teach my brotherhood. I've visited 12 different NFL teams this spring, taught hundreds, just under 500 players this offseason. And the goal is, the first message is, what is the difference between rich and wealth? And to get them to kind of not understand exactly where I'm going or what I mean. And I called them, yo, you guys are rich rookies. I mean, you're coming from the NIL rev share era. You're walking into the NFL with money. You're rich today, richer than most 22-year-olds ever could dream of or imagine. But what's the difference between rich and wealth? Why do we call them wealthy veterans? And it's this notion that everything is seen through time, and the difference between rich and wealth is measured in time. Rich is you have a lot of money today. Wealth is how many tomorrows do you not have to worry about have to worry about money. And to see that explanation, to see their shift in time, and to see their shift in understanding. The professional era today starts at 18 in college, goes through the NFL, Major League Baseball, whichever program you want, and they are given an opportunity. But just like any opportunity, if you don't understand how to capture it, that opportunity comes and goes by very quickly. Everybody points to taxes. Taxes is a massive hit. 40%, 50%, 30+% gone. So I made $5 million. Now I'm at 2.5 before I've even eaten breakfast or bought a house. Then you start to look at what I would call the number one hurdle athletes face today. Not taxes, not big cars, not fancy homes. It's who is we and we made it. The pressure, the social pressure of family and friends today at 19, when you look at them and go, this is a $1 million athlete, going to be a $50, $100 million. How many people are going on that journey with we made it?
Yeah.
And looking at a young player at 17, 19, 22, 29 and saying, you need to be able to look and say, just like getting on a plane, they tell you put your air mask on first before helping the person next to you. We need to make sure your air mask is secure. That comes with a financial plan. That comes with the goal of becoming wealthy. And it becomes with looking through decades, not days. And so where I talk to a lot of professional athletes, and I call business athletes, is to get them to start to see themselves as a business, to set up this plan for the next 30 to 40 decades of their lives, not just some amazing days in their 20s. And a lot of it comes back to that idea of being a business athlete. And that business is a great player on the field. They also have a mindset that's going to translate into any avenue that they want to go explore, that so many athletes overlook, the immense talents they have. And then it goes to this idea of memories and capturing your voice and making it an asset that is going to transition with you beyond your game. Those stories around the mindset of how you were a great athlete are going to help you in every road you go down. Even if you become a car salesman or a CEO, it doesn't matter. Leaders are great communicators. And so as I talk to them, I want them to see this shift in money and time, both in what rich and wealth is in decades, not days, but then to also see themselves as a business and be able to start to represent and present themselves as this possibly already $1 million company, but as one with a brand and a message that they understand and can communicate.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to, setting boundaries of the boundaries of, who is in my circle, who am I
Mm.
going to help? And then also to what extent am I going to help them? Is it going to be, my parents and I'm going to, pay off their mortgage? Or is it going to be, yeah, I have these friends I had in high school and they're asking for this much money because they're going through it. I'm just going to hand it over. I think it's super important for all professional athletes to set boundaries with the people around them, but also set boundaries for themselves. I mean, you see the professional athletes athlete that as soon as they, get that first contract or get that signing bonus and they show up to the facility with a new card the next day. And
Bingo.
was that something that was, absolutely necessary? Is that going to be an asset or a liability for you in the future? And so I think it's so interesting when you just hear about, these athletes and the ones that are super successful. Ndamukong Suh, who played at the University of Nebraska, watch him all growing up. One of my,
Yeah.
favorite players to watch at Nebraska and then in the NFL. He also, talks about the financial side of just how the average NFL career is not long. I mean, he played
Three
quite a few
years.
years, 3 years, and that's not enough money. With even if you're one of the best, that's not enough to set yourself up just for the rest of your life where you're not working. And so it's super important to set those boundaries so that income that you do make can last as long as possible. What are some of the biggest struggles that you see from professional athletes on the financial side of things?
Number one, got to call out Ndamukong Suh is actually my teammate this year in 4th and goal for the Lions, and he has many memorable moments. But one that stuck out with me, being a Nebraska man for yourself, I'm standing on the sideline before we play a game, and I see this older gentleman walking onto the field, and it's Warren Buffett. And I'm like, holy crap, the Oracle of Omaha? Like, here we
Yeah.
go. This is so cool. And he's wearing an Ndamukong Suh jersey, and I just am like, mind blown. Like, yo, you want to tell me you made it? You get Warren Buffett to wear your jersey. That's a wrap. Like, coolest thing ever. Have loved seeing Sue and the message he's putting out around financial empowerment. I look even in your example, they buy this car, and is it going to, they don't know the difference between assets and liabilities, depreciating assets and appreciating, liabilities at times, but looking at where they're trying to go and say, hey, this money, this decisions you're making, what do you see? Have you ever asked yourself what the return is? Have you ever asked yourself what the tax advantage is? Have you ever asked yourself how this is going to impact your cash flow, not only right now, but that $125,000 car is not going to be inexpensive to fix or fill up here in the next few years. I tell a lot of guys, $1 million house means $1 million lifestyle. And they kind of forget that, ooh, I can afford the down payment, but I forget the property taxes, the property insurance. I got to put couches and nice things in it, and then I got to heat it. The lifestyle is what often we don't really understand and see. That simple definition of, are you buying an asset or are you buying a liability, is a question not many athletes have the education or the knowledge to ask. And many look at me and go, well, I'm buying a house. My house is a great investment. And I say, it can be, but it's not an asset. For the next, this is the rich dad, poor dad. Your home is not an asset. For the next 20 to 30 years, that home is going to do nothing but take money out of your pocket. So don't look at me and tell me that home for mom is an asset, this car for you is an asset. We have to start understanding truly what those words mean, how they fit into our plan, and then we can start to discuss, okay, you are a business outside of this game. The business owner, the CEO does need a car. Maybe you can purchase a car and have it be a deduction and a business expense, but never let the tax tail wag the dog. Never try to save money by overspending in a certain area. And so it's just this conversation. You don't tell an athlete, oh, you can't buy that car. You try to get them to understand, how is this decision going to impact now, and how is it going to impact later?
Yeah, it's so wild just how much there is that goes into, money and the business side of professional sports. When you got done playing in the NFL after your unbelievable career of the ups and the downs and, scoring touchdowns and all of that, what was the hardest thing about, being done in the NFL, not being a professional football player anymore? And one, I mean, something that you worked so hard for your entire life, now isn't what you're doing every single day. How did you handle that? And then from the financial side of, how did you set yourself up for success in the future, and how could other athletes too?
The identity in the transition is tremendous. Not, I was Jed the jock, Jed the athlete from an early age. I was basketball, then I was football, but I was always identified with athleticism. Once the game is done, very hard to accept a new identity. And so that was a massive transition. Sitting in corporate America, I went to work in wealth management for a few years before breaking out and starting my own business. The biggest realization is nobody claps for you anymore. That was one of the kind of funny aha moments of sitting in an office and going, good, bad, nobody kind of celebrates where is my recognition? How do I know if you clap for me, I know I did a good job. Nobody's clapping anymore. How do I know if I'm doing a good job? That was one of the strange kind of transitions. I set myself up because I had the beauty, and I'm going to emphasize that word beauty, of seeing my career end before it even began. Getting cut a dozen times early on showed me football is great. Football is going to end. You got to do something after. So I was setting up my career before the game was done with me, which helped in my transition. I will still own and admit it was really hard and really a struggle from, that loss of identity and that loss of team and locker room. So having a path to go down is one of the greatest things I try to get athletes to know. I don't care if it's going to something you're going to do for the next 30 years, but just start walking down a road. You will see the off ramps and the other things you want to go do as you're walking down that path. The biggest part is, can I today, which is why I talk a lot about journaling, storytelling, and brand building, can I have an income or revenue generation outside of my sport? Can I have a side hustle, a side business, something other than just my sport paying me? Because that is going to soften the landing once that paycheck stops. And $1 million paycheck is an amazing thing. Once it stops, it is the complete opposite of amazing. And so how do you set up income producing assets as you're playing? A lot of guys want to get into real estate. Real estate is amazing, especially for the bigger contract guys. But there are lots of avenues and ways for players in that transition to already have small income streams set up. And that's something that I try to talk to them a lot about. Again, going back to that idea of what is an asset. And so that's helped in breaking down that, mindset, or breaking down that stigma of pro athlete going broke. If I can identify who I am beyond the game and build income streams outside of the game, I have a better chance of making sure I capture all the opportunities within the game.
You talk about becoming a business owner, and I think that's something that a lot of athletes, strive to do. Everyone, I think, wants to be an entrepreneur, but no one knows really where to start. What are some things that you think make one a good business, from an owner's standpoint? And starting from, when someone is trying to start a business, what are some of the traits that you need in order to, start from the bottom and build your way up? And then what are some of the traits that you need to maintain being a business owner?
To be an entrepreneur today, you have to accept failure. You are going to be told no 99 times before you get told yes. That grit is what I learned in the NFL. It is what helps me survive today as an entrepreneur. And I tell people right and left, being an entrepreneur is not for everybody. My biggest regret is not having a partner. I'm a solopreneur. I built my business by myself. I would not suggest that. I'm a team player. I wish I would have had more of that locker room feel. But if you want to be an entrepreneur, you have to accept this simple fact. You're crazy.
Mhm.
And people hesitate and go, wait a minute. You're crazy. What is a crazy person? A crazy person sees something that isn't really there. As an entrepreneur, you have a vision, a dream that you believe is real that nobody else sees and nobody else is going to see until you go get those 99 no's. And then one person will agree with you and say, all right, maybe I see your dream. Maybe I see that vision. So accept that you're going to be seen just like you. You're going to start a podcast? You're crazy. You're going to start social? You're crazy. You're going to start journaling? You're crazy. People are going to call you crazy mainly because they can never see themselves doing it, but also because they just don't see your vision. With that being said, some entrepreneurs do become crazy genius, and there's a reason that quote goes together. Kanye West, crazy, genius. There's a connection to it. So you have to accept that if you're going to go down the entrepreneurial path, you have to be a little crazy. What makes a successful business today is identifying a very niche problem and a niche audience and then telling that audience over and over and over and over and over and over and over what it is that you do. I am a decade into being the fullback of finance, building a personal brand around financial literacy and empowerment. And to this day, I still have people come up to me and go, "So you're a financial advisor for professional athletes?" No, I don't have a single client. I don't
Yeah.
manage a single dollar. I'm an educator. But that's just because I have not done a good enough job branding myself and continuing the simple message of who I am and what I do and why I'm different and unique. That is a challenge. Work like hell and advertise is one of the greatest things. You have to realize, I don't care what company, what business, what role, who you are, what you're doing, everybody is in sales today. So be willing to get out of your comfort zone, be willing to be told no, be willing to be told you're crazy, and you just might have a chance to be an entrepreneur. And at the end of the day, you go into it knowing 90+% of businesses fail. Amazon's goal is to not fail tomorrow. That's why they have the day one mindset. They continue to push it out one more day. If they're afraid of it, and if companies like Apple are questioning if they're going to be around in 10 years, your little thing is not going to withstand the test of time. Accept that and try to enjoy, and this is the hardest thing, try to enjoy the journey while you're on it. I 18 years ago, I wrote down this dream. I'm living a dream. If you don't think there's some nightmares that I wake up to, you're out of your mind. And I'm living exactly what I hoped I would. But it still isn't easy. Nobody is going to give you an easy path. You have to pave your own way.
Yeah, I think there's a few unteachable lessons that we have to learn in life. I think one of them is that you're never going to arrive. I think
Mm,
for
mm,
so
mm.
long, you're going to think that you're going to end up, at a place and you're just going to be set up for success. At some point, I'm going to work so hard and I'm going to get to a point, I'm going to say, "Yeah, I made it. Like, this is officially it." But then when you get to that point, you're saying, "All right, how do I get even better this next day?" And so I
Yep.
think it's so important to realize that you're never going to arrive. I remember when I first started the podcast, one of my buddies was like, "So what's your end game with this?" I was like, "End game? Like, there is no end game. Like,
Endgame.
I just keep asking like really cool people to like hop on the podcast or, having the opportunity to, have conversations with unbelievable athletes and great stories. And there's no point. It's not like you mentioned Tom Brady. It's not like I'm going to get Tom Brady on and be like, "All right, we're good.
Yeah.
We made it." No,
Ah,
there's so much
give it
more.
some time.
And I think it's so important to realize that you're never going to arrive. Another one of those unteachable lessons that, I can't say it for myself. I still got a long ways to go, but, money's not going to make you happy. And, you could hear
Mm.
a millionaire telling you that. And as a 24-year-old, I'm just going to be like, well, it might. Like, I'm going to have to find that out myself. But it's one of those lessons that you kind of just have to learn on your own. And I think a lot of athletes go through that.
And it goes back to my kennel moment. Thinking the trophy and thinking somebody telling me I was king was going to be what fulfilled me. I have talked to enough professional athletes with more money than they could have ever imagined. And they look at me and go, "How are you so happy?" And I go, "Phew, don't read my journal. Like, yeah, I deal with my demons and I struggle just like anyone else. But the idea that money is going to fix who you are, it's that cool runnings, man. If you're not enough without it, you're never going to be enough with it. Money solves some problems. Money definitely doesn't solve all problems, and it reveals a lot more than most people really take into consideration. But as we look at the athlete mindset and the athlete challenge of the future, they are the next frontier of wealth. They are going to become 100 million billionaires. I mean, there are 10 football players right now who will become billionaires in their careers. They're also going to realize the mental health side doesn't have anything to do with your bank account, your brokerage account, or, even your fame. It is who you see in the mirror. Are you proud and accepting of that person? Can you never arrive and still be proud of where you are? That is the ultimate balancing act of ambition. That is the struggle of every professional athlete or professional period. Is I love that quote, "You've never arrived, but at the same time you got to be proud of where you are." And that's a hard but healthy balance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important, whether it's with family or friends, is kind of just letting them know that I know that you can do amazing things. I know that you are striving to, get to this point in your career and then even beyond that. But right now, like, I'm appreciative of who you are right now. And I think of a lot of athletes or business owners sometimes only think of themselves as, I'll be great, once I get to this point, or once I have this much revenue, then I can say that I'm successful. And I think it's
Mhm.
important just to kind of reiterate to ourselves and then to the people around us that, you are enough right now, but I still know that you can do so much more in the future.
I look at my book, man. Fourth and Goal. Am I a New York Times bestseller? Absolutely not. Do I see it as a success? Yes, because my measurement was different. And it is an internal game. That's where we get so, and social media is so hard because everything is put up externally and put up against that other person. Now I'm battling, whoever the greatest authors of all time are. It's like, no, this was my goal. This is where I saw, and even though I climbed a mountain, I can get to the top of it and see the peak of another mountain. You do not arrive. You have another mountain to climb, but it is this notion of internally, can I look in the man in the mirror, man? Can I look at him and be proud of who I am today? Growth from yesterday. I got to train and work with a guy named Darren Sproles, who set the NFL record for most all-purpose yards in a season. And that offseason, after a season of the NFL record, I remember looking at Sprolesy and going, man, who do you compete with now? Like, you literally are the record holder. Like, what are you training for? And he goes, Jed, I compete with the same guy I compete every day with yesterday. Who I was yesterday. Can I improve on him? And Sproles didn't care about records. He didn't care about this or that. He just cared about, is he getting better? And that's really what we have to do more of, especially in social media day and age of the fakeness and the hot news on whatever. 90% of that's not real. It's through a lens that they want you to look through. Can you look through the lens at yourself and go, this is who I am right now. This is where I'm going, and this is where I've been. I'm proud and ambitious at the same time. That's the athlete mindset.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I end every conversation with the same question. If you could go back and give your younger self just one piece of advice regarding the, mental side of the game, let's say it is, Jed Collins, right when you go undrafted and you're, searching for your future in football, what advice would you give to yourself?
I would say twofold. Number one, you're more than the identity of an athlete. You're more than a game. You're more than football. You're more than basketball. You went undrafted, so what? You are a human. You are a hard worker. You live the right way. You do the right things. And when you do the right things, you fear no one. So trust more in yourself as a person than yourself as an athlete. Um, Continue to invest in that person because they're going to be with you a lot longer than you have a helmet on. And the other one is kind of poetically, uh, I gave up cycling outside because I was afraid of getting hit by a car. A friend of mine got hit, and it's just the stories. And so I was running last week outside at a stop sign, crossing the street. Car comes, knocks me off my feet, roll up on their hood, land on the ground. And I get up, and it's an old lady. And actually, I get out from in front of the car. She drives away. It was a hit and run felony. But in that moment, I'm walking away from being hit by this car, and I go, I was worried about this meeting I had. I was worried about this thing I was doing. I was worried about so many other things. And bam, I got hit by a car. What I wish I would tell myself, and this is something I tell myself today, 20 years ago, and probably in 20 years, half the things you worry about don't happen. You never see the car coming that you get hit by. Control what you can control. That's an internal game. The external game is one. If you start to chase, you're never going to win. That goalpost continues to move. Try to control the inner game, mow your grass, and that is where you're going to find your success, happiness, and fulfillment. That is something I am telling to me right now, and it's something I would have told myself at 22, being disappointed in, boo-hoo, you didn't get drafted. Man, you're still in the midst of a dream. You still got to play college football. It's all perspective. Just keep working on you, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, you said it perfectly. Most of the advice that you needed way back when is still the same advice that you need today. And we just need a
Yes,
little
sir.
bit of a reminder every so often. Jed, I appreciate you taking the time to hop on here. This was an unbelievable conversation. Your story is incredible from your time in the NFL to even now and what you're doing now and just, instilling so much good information into professional athletes, college athletes, young athletes in general. So once again, I appreciate you coming on.
Tristan, mindset motivations, just like showering. We need to do it every day, sometimes twice a day. I appreciate the stage. I appreciate the opportunity to share my message. Hopefully, some of your followers enjoyed it, got value. And if they want more of me, Fourth and Goal is out. It has a companion journal, but the goal is to get you to start capturing your story. So thank you, and I look forward to the next.
Yes, sir. Thank you again to Jed for sharing his journey and insight into the mental side of the game. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who would find it valuable. Thanks for tuning in and keep moving forward. Until next time.